this is part 4 and hopefully the last lecture for chapter 5, plant diversity. I want to go back, hold on, there we go. I want to go back because in one of the first, I just want to make sure for the pictures that I've told you exactly what they are. These are sporophytes of moss plants. And that is a charophyte, which is basically a weed, which is it's a green algae most closely related to the land plants. And here's what I wanted to, when I looked at this picture, some of these looked so much like a moss plant that I thought that's what they were, but I was mistaken. This is a picture of all the various types, or many of the various types of liverworts. So every one of these are liverworts. But you can see that, for example, this portion is the gametophyte of the liverwort, and this portion is the sporophyte of the liverwort. And you can see the same thing here. You can see that this part is the gametophyte of the liverwort, and then the stalks that grow out of them are the sporophytes of the liverwort. But these are all liverwort plants. I just wanted to make that clear to you. And this is what the gametophyte of the liverwort looks like if you were to see it in the woods. Hornworts look like this. And this is the sporophyte of the hornwort. The hornwort actually has a little cup-shaped leaf. And then we talked about mosses, and we got into now I'm going too far. Okay, so we got into the life cycle of the conifers. So at this point, I wanted to make sure that you knew what, I told you that the gametophytes become reduced in the vascular seed plants. So the male gametophyte is actually the pollen grain. And the female gametophyte is the embryo sac that contains the egg. This will be true for all of the seed plants. I didn't see where it was very clear about that. So you no longer have a gametophyte that's a separate structure. It's just the male gametophyte is the pollen, and then the female gametophyte is the embryo sac that holds the egg. Conifers, or Coniferophyta, try saying that one, is the largest phylum of gymnosperms, and they are represented by conifers, which are found, they're the most predominant plants at high altitude and latitude. So the further north that you go and the higher up that you go, like on a mountain. Water evaporation is reduced because they have those thin needle-like leaves, and they do produce cones. So you see some pictures here of conifers. The cycads resemble palm trees, although they are not palm trees, and they do produce cones. You can see they're very large cones. They grow in the tropics, and they're pollinated typically by beetles rather than wind, which is unusual for a gymnosperm. It's more common to have insect pollinators with the flowering plants. And then the ginkgo biloba, is the only plant of the Ginkgophyta that actually still exist. Gnetophytes are the closest relative to modern angiosperms or flowering plants. They have broad leaves instead of needles. And you can see some examples of Ephedra, which has been used as a diet drug, an ingredient in diet pills. I think it's banned now, but it at one time it was an ingredient in diet pills. It's kind of like natural caffeine. And then there's Welwitschia, which is very, very old. That's it. It can live for very, very long, like thousands and thousands of years. Um, and let's see. So now we're to the angiosperms. Angiosperms are characterized by having flowers and fruit. The ovary actually develops into a fruit. So when you eat a fruit, you are eating the ripened ovary of a flowering plant. The angiosperms are the dominant plants today, the dominant plant type today. Flowers are modified leaves, modified sporophylls. That's one of your quiz questions. And the main parts are the sepals and the petals. The petals are the colored parts, and the sepals are the little green leaves that actually form the bud, and then they kind of wither away whenever the flower blooms. The sepals and the petals protect the reproductive structures, the stamens, which are the male reproductive structures, and the carpels, which are the female reproductive structures. The male gametes or sperm are found in the pollen grains. The pollen grain is the actual male gametophyte, and the female gametes are eggs, which are found within the ovary of a carpel, and then ripened ovaries are what we call fruit. And here's a picture of a flower and both the male and female parts. Here's petal, sepal, and this particular flower, this is the stamen here, and that's the anther, and that's the filament. The entire structure is called a stamen. And then for the female structure, the ovules containing the embryo sacs, these are your female gametophytes, and they contain the egg. The carpels or female parts of the flower contain a stigma, which is sticky, allows the pollen to stick to it, and then the pollen tube grows down the style and transfers the sperm to the egg. And those ovules grow into seeds once they're fertilized by the sperm. This is the life cycle of a flowering plant. And the main thing is where this gets really complicated is pollination. It's not just like one sperm pollinates one egg. Let's see if there's notes about it. Double fertilization is unique to angiosperm. Okay, let's read about it first and we can go back and look. So the angiosperm life cycle is dominated by the sporophyte stage. That's no surprise because the sporophyte is the dominant life cycle or the dominant structure of plants unless they're bryophytes. Everything else, vascular, has the sporophyte as the dominant stage. But double fertilization is unique to flowering plants. There's one sperm in the pollen that fertilizes the egg, and that sperm and that egg form a diploid zygote. And that is, just like what happens with humans. Then there is another sperm that combines with two polar nuclei, and that forms a triploid cell. That means it contains 3 times the chromosomes. Instead of 2 copies of chromosomes, it contains 3 copies of chromosomes. And the triploid cell develops into food storage tissue called the endosperm of the seed. So now if we go back, you can see, okay, so here's the anther, which produces the pollen grains. And the pollen grains produce 2 sperm, a generative cell and a tube cell. And the tube cell is the one that fertilizes the egg and produces a zygote. Then the generative cell